Before I hand over to my brilliant colleague, Carla Parker, for the next session, we've got a great speaker, Professor Kandola. I'm going to go to Roy Lilly, who's got a 1-minute announcement about a launch from Fab Stuff. Roy, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Roy, yeah.
Okay, you can't see me, I'm afraid. For some reason or other, my video's dropped out, but let's press on. Look, I'm really pleased to be involved and invited in for this 60 seconds of this session for the introducing the anti-racism at work campaign. It is so very important how we treat each other. The central theme that's come out so far, and I've been looking at all the other video streams, there are 6 going on at once. We got about 400 people watching live across all the platforms at any one time. It's huge. The theme that's come out is the compassion and the kindness themes, where it's so important that we treat each other in these sort of very pressured times. We treat each other better, we treat each other well, we treat each other with compassion and caring and understanding. And the racism, I just wanted to share with you, this was a conference I was at in good old days when you could go to real conferences. I was at a conference and I sat at lunchtime next to a couple of very nice ladies who were very charming. They read my stuff and we had a conversation about something I'd written. And I said, you know, what about you? Tell me about you. And they were both MBA graduates. They were both NHS managers. They were super charming, and I described them as the kind of the classic customer for Waitrose. You know, they were in that demographic. They were terrific, and I said, you know, how are you getting on with your career? What are you doing? And they said, oh, they both said, well, I think we've gone as far as we can go. We can't get any more promotion. And I said, well, why is that? And they said, well, it's obvious, Roy, we are West Indian, we're black. And, you know, that hit me over the head like a baseball bat. It never for 1 minute occurred to me that there would be that kind of prejudice in the NHS. And they both went on and shared some private experiences they'd had in their career, in trying to get training grants, in trying to get to the leadership academy, in trying to be able to develop their careers and get promotion. And it was a horror story. And so, look, you know, we know that these things go on, and there's only one way to stop it. And that's if we all decide to say, do you know what, we're going to stop this, because it's a waste of human resource, if nothing else, but it's also really insulting to our colleagues. So I'm really pleased to have had the opportunity to say these few words. Thank you for giving it to me, and I wish the anti-racism campaign, a racism work campaign, to be a huge success. And thank you for choosing to launch it on Fab Change Day. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Roy. And as ever, thanks for all the work you do and all the support. I'm going to go straight now to my colleague, Carla Parker, who's going to introduce our next speaker. So over to you, Carla.
Thank you, Pete, and good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome Professor Kandola, OBE, business psychologist, senior partner and co-founder of Kandola, a business psychology consultancy. Binna is particularly interested in the study of unconscious bias and is the author of a number of critically acclaimed books, including Racism at Work, The Danger of Indifference, and his latest book, which he edited, Free to Soar, Race and Wellbeing in Organisations. Good morning, Binna.
Hey, Carla. Sorry, I can't get my video to work, and but you can hear me, I can see.
We can hear you.
So sorry about that. I've got a tie on and shoes. Hello?
Hi there, yeah, we can hear you. Are you there, Binna?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, what was I missed your question. It was like, you want me to talk about the latest book?
Yeah, and the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, I wrote a book 2 years ago called Racism at Work, The Danger of Indifference. And the subtitle of that book was actually what the book was about, really. That we had become indifferent to the topic of race. It's not the case now. It's clearly over the last few months, there's a lot more attention that's been given to race, but actually over the last period, we have become indifferent to it, and we've ignored its impact. And the latest book is actually looking. This is free to soar, race and well-being in organisations. It's looking at the impact of discriminatory behaviour on people's well-being and then subsequently on performance. So it's kind of drawing two literatures together, well-being and racism, and kind of say the impact it has on individuals' well-being, but also the impact it has on performance in organisations.
Great, thank you. And when I first kind of came across your work, I was listening to a webinar that you'd done, and you talked about some research that I found really interesting. Would you mind talking to us a bit about that?
Yeah, the people. I mean, there has been a sea change in our attitudes on race, without a doubt. There has been a sea change. We're much more accepting of having minorities as colleagues, as friends, as neighbours, as partners, and we're far less accepting of overt acts of discrimination, whether it's things that people say and display of attitudes or overt racist behaviours. And this has led people to kind of conclude that racism is on its way to being eradicated. But but our view about what is racist tends to be limited to very obvious acts. And modern racism, and our psychologists refer to those type of behaviours as old-fashioned racism, not non-existent, but old-fashioned. Modern racism is subtle, it's indirect, and it's ambiguous and difficult to detect unless you're on the receiving end. And modern racists won't necessarily endorse or express racist stereotypes, but given the opportunity, they will make discriminatory decisions. So the classic research that's been done is just sending out 2 CVs to organisations which are identical in all respects, apart from the name. So it's a research paradigm that everybody will be familiar with. And it's just looking to see whether the perceived ethnicity of the individual actually has an impact in terms of their chances of being shortlisted for a job. Basically, the research done at the OECD did a summary report of this. This research has been done in every Western European country, in North America, and it obviously includes Britain. And the results are always the same. If it's a minority sounding candidate, they have far less chance of being shortlisted than if it's a majority sounding candidate. One piece that some countries, they've done the research, they've repeated the research 10 years after. So in Sweden, Canada, North America, they've repeated the same research, replicated it 10 years after with no change in results. The University of Oxford published research last year. So there's no change in results in 2019 or 2018 when the research was carried out than there was 40 years before. So things have changed, but not as much as we would like to think.
And that research was just on a name, Binna?
Yeah, everything else is identical.
Wow.
Yeah. One piece of research actually found that a white person with a criminal record had a better chance of being shortlisted for a job than a black person without a criminal record. So that the paper was actually called The Stigma of a Criminal Record. And so this was almost like a byproduct of the research. They found that being black was actually more stigmatizing than having a criminal record.
Wow, that's really shocking, actually. I mean, for me to hear that, and I'm sure others on the call will feel the same. And there's even a comment in the group where it's just sad to hear that sort of thing, to have that harsh reality presented back to you, in evidence like the research that you mentioned. So what about things that, I mean, like you say, there has been change has happened. So would you, are there any things that you think that organisations can do to recognise bias and to move towards being more inclusive?
The critical thing, actually, there are lots of things we can do, actually, Carla, and there are lots of things we can do. Racism is not inevitable. It's not natural. Actually, one of the things I've learned from doing the research on the book is actually racism in terms of dealing with people on the basis of their colour, making judgments based on people based on their colour, is actually a relatively new thing in terms of human evolution. So it's not natural, it's not inevitable, and there are lots of things that we can do to treat people fairly. But the most important thing is the role that leadership plays, and where leadership take this seriously, it sends a we know this. We know this that actually where the leaders set the tone, they set the direction. They need to role model the behaviours, and they need to make it clear that what their expectations are of everybody in an organisation, and then it moves from there. And so leadership need to accept that race is an issue, and clearly the many leaders already spoken this morning. But that kind of persistence with this, it needs to go beyond the level of attention that race has been giving over the last few months. It needs to carry on, and it needs to be sustained over many years now. Because once we stop giving it the attention, things don't just stop; they revert. And I think it's very important, this notion of sustainability in terms of the actions that we take. So it's not just this generation of leaders. We need to make sure that the generation of leaders who follow them, who succeed them, actually have the same degree of commitment that current leadership has.
Yeah, completely agree there. And I think even Stephen, when he introduced, our whole session, was talking about leadership. So I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, there are implicit association tests, and there are things that help that teams can do and organisations can do to look at unconscious bias, or conscious and unconscious bias, and to see what things they can address. What do you think about things like implicit association tests?
Yeah, they're fine. I mean, they're getting a bad rap at the moment. And there's psychologists who pile in. I'm a psychologist myself, and there's psychologists who pile in. Oh, this stuff's a load of rubbish, and actually, it's a tool. It's a technique. It can provide powerful insights to an individual. I did it for the first time in August of 2003. It had that significant an impact on me, Carla. I still remember the day I took it, August 2003, and I realised at that moment that I'm nowhere near as fair as I thought I was. And it's that kind of self-realization where it has a tremendous impact, and we should be using it for that. And actually, I'm very suspicious of psychologists who continually telling us these tools are ineffective, because they're the same psychologists who never report. They're evidence-based psychologists, they will call themselves, but they never report the evidence about the extent of discrimination in organisations. So the argument is actually totally lopsided. So they will actually show these techniques don't work in eradicating bias and identifying it, but they never talk about anything else. So the message is all about things that don't work, as opposed to there is a real problem here that we need to address. So I'm suspicious of those, but it does work, and it does work in some circumstances. The race tests are better than the gender tests. So there's a lot of tests. And some of the work that's been done using the implicit association test actually has demonstrated the way the doctors, for example, treat patients varies according to their scores on a race IAT. So that we kind of thrown the baby out of the bathwater because I think we want to. I think we want to find ways of dismissing race as an issue.
Yeah, I think there are so many elements of that I agree with. I think the thing that always stands out for me is that having been on the end of discrimination is how it makes that person feel. So I guess it's that compassion, it's that kindness, and it's that understanding that we're more similar than we are different. There is a question in the box, and this will probably be the last bit we've got time for, Binna, but what one thing can we all do to make a difference?
Yeah, the one thing, I think it relates to your last question, to be honest, Carla. The one thing that we have victims, and we have witnesses, and we have perpetrators, and we treat them as three separate boxes. So you can be a victim, I could be a victim, I could be a witness. But the thing I need to acknowledge is that I could be a perpetrator. So actually, we've got victims, witnesses, and perpetrators, and we will fall, depending on the circumstances, we could fall in any one of those three. Any one of those three. So I could be a perpetrator, and it's the recognition that I could be a perpetrator on some of the things that I may even not be aware that I'm doing. All right. Now, maybe I think you're right to say conscious and unconscious. People often talk just about unconscious. Some of the behaviors will be, but actually, I need to recognize my potential, the potential of me to be a perpetrator.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful, actually, Binna, and it's been, as always, a pleasure listening to you and sharing the work that you've done. And I'll definitely have a read of your latest book. And I'm just really grateful for your time today. And I'm sure that it's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope that you'll have a bit of time to stay around for some more of the session today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Binna.